Welcome to day 5 of our devotional series called People of Purpose, where we look at the Bible's most amazing leaders and what we can learn from them to be leaders who are people of purpose today. We're going to be looking at the call and experience of Elisha. We're going to find out 3 important steps in the process of moving from behind the plow to spiritual leadership. The first thing that we're going to learn is for us to reveal our desire for the leadership mantle, to honor God and do well the things which God has given to us. We pick up the story in 1 Kings chapter 19. Elijah went from there and found Elisha son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. Elisha then left his oxen and ran after Elijah. "Let me kiss my father and my mother goodbye," he said, "and then I will come with you." "Go back," Elijah replied. "What have I done to you?" So Elisha left him and went back. He took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he set out to follow Elijah to become his servant. Until that very moment, Elisha had been working with anonymity. He was just an obscure farmer, but one who was following God and remaining true to him. He is one of the 7,000 to whom God made reference to Elijah as those who are remaining loyal to him. So Elisha was willing to do whatever God asked of him. The same God who led Elijah to be the mentor of Elisha as the new leader is calling experienced leaders to be our mentors today. The time when the baton must change hands has come. God is ready to raise up new leaders. So how will you demonstrate that you are willing to take the mantle and lift the baton? The second environment that we're going to be looking at is the fact that we need to be patient and persevere waiting for the mantle of leadership. To move beyond the plow and embrace the mantle of leadership, you must remember that God has time for you, and you must preserve patiently waiting for your time to wear the leadership mantle. God's purpose works only with God's timing. When God's time came, Elijah was more than happy to pass the ministry baton to Elisha, and Elisha, who had been serving patiently and joyfully for Elijah, was more than willing to catch that pass. Read in 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 15, where Paul says, "Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker does not need to be ashamed, and who correctly handles the word of truth." You see, God knows your heart. He looks deeper than the surface. He knows how you are serving Him in the little things even. And as you engage in ordinary everyday duties, you may be in active service to God. So be patient and persevere waiting for the mantle of leadership. The third process involved with moving from behind the plow and picking up the mantle of leadership is for us to ask for a double portion of the Holy Spirit to exalt God's power. When Elijah knew he was nearing the end of his life, he said to the man who had served him many years, "You should stay here, for the Lord has sent me on to the Jordan." But Elisha, who had preserved in long faithful service to his master, said, "As the Lord lives, as your soul lives, I will not leave you." The story continues where they went together to the Jordan, while 50 of the prophet's sons stood facing them at a distance from where they could clearly see the two of them standing by the Jordan River. The Bible then says Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water. The water then divided to the left and to the right, and the two of them crossed over on dry ground. And when they crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me, what can I do for you before I am taken from you?" "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," Elisha replied. "You've asked a difficult thing," Elijah said. "Yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, it will not." As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them, and Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and the horsemen of Israel." And Elisha saw him no more. Then he took hold of his garment, tore it in two, then picked up Elijah's cloak that had fallen from him and went back and stood at the bank of the Jordan. He took the cloak that had fallen from Elijah and struck the water with it. "Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" he asked. And when he struck the water, it divided to the left and to the right, and he crossed over. That story is from 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 8 through to 14. But by his action and his prayer, Elisha invoked the power and presence of God as he assumes the prophetic mantle. He asked not for a worldly honor or for a high place among great men on earth. That which he craved was a large measure of the Spirit that God had bestowed so freely upon Elijah. He knew that nothing but the Spirit which had rested upon Elijah could fit him to fill the place in Israel to which God had called him. God has leaders today who he has called to be mentors like Elijah, of a new generation of leaders well trained to lead others to Christ. Paul's appeal to us in 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 2 is, "And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others." We must remember that Christian leadership means to develop a Christian influence and live a life of example to those around us. Let us live a life that is worthy of the calling, so that when it is time to pass that baton, we are ready to receive it.